Dillian Whyte's premeditated, energy-sapping, rule infringement tactics changed the course of a fight, facilitated by an inept and corrupt referee who had no intentions of upholding the Marquess of Queensberry rules, determined just to pacify a crowd that had come to watch a London-based fighter ultimately prevail and book his place for a rematch against Anthony Joshua at Wembley Stadium in April, and pocket a massive purse yet again, as if the 3.8 million wasn't sufficient in this fight. I mean, not only did Joseph Parker had to contend with an incorrect knockdown that was caused by a headbutt delivered with velocity and force, and ultimately ruled a 10-8 against him, but he had to deal with a much heavier fighter, approximately 18 pounds heavier, who subjected Joseph to several spears almost through the ropes and over the ropes, as well as holding the ropes and hitting Joseph on the back, hitting Joseph kidney punches, forearms, excessive leaning and bear hugging, both frontal and reverse as well. A well calculated strategy designed to exacerbate the fatigue of a fighter who has shown such symptoms in his previous fights of running out of steam during the mid-stage of a fight. When a fighter is losing the first 4 rounds against a much younger, fleet-footed fighter, more athletic, certainly better footwork, the fighter under adversity has to try and do something, has to try and change the balance of a fight. His success double jabs, the left hooks to the body, but were all single punches. Dillian couldn't sufficiently cut off the ring, trap Joseph, and then unload a barrage of body punches, which was the focus of his attack. And Dillian does have a very decent left hook to the body. Nobody can dispute that. It's delivered with some force, and the acoustics can be heard by everybody watching at home on their televisions or computers, etc. Joseph does have a good chin, but the body work was definitely having an effect on slowing him down, making him a little bit more negative, and operating in that safety first sort of mantra that has been, that his critics have been relaying to him over and over again. Joseph, defensively and extremely inept as well. His lead hand is so far down, relying on reflexes, his youth to try and evade punches, but his head is too far up in the air and he backs off in straight lines. And whenever he breaks range, his lead hand is always by his side, gunslinger style, all a fighter has to do is just to fire an orthodox fighter has to do is just fire a straight hand and it will definitely connect. But Dillian may not have discerned that. Dillian doesn't really throw that many lead straight right hands. Generally he counter punches with his jab or his left hook. But so Parker, even according to some of the UK pundits that were scoring the fight, particularly Glenn McCrory, former cruiserweight champion, even Gareth A. Davis, a renowned boxing writer for The Guardian in the United Kingdom, both of them had Joseph Parker winning the first 4 rounds. So if you factor in that Dillian won rounds 5 to 10, even factoring in an incorrect knockdown, Joseph Parker wins the 11th. He hurts Dillian Whyte significantly with an uppercut. Whyte is even close to hitting the canvas then. A combination of wear and tear, the extra weight, the drag factor, the fatigue, and as well as the uppercut, which was a superb shot. And then the 12th round, Parker lands a series of punches against an extremely exhausted Dillian Whyte who can barely even stand. It's just his intention is to survive 3 minutes. Joseph Parker puts him to the canvas, and Dillian Whyte is extremely fortunate that the knockdown is towards the end of the fight. He just has to survive an extra 30 odd seconds, applies a vice right grip, just survival tactics, and survives the fight. Had it been 30 seconds earlier, that knockdown, Dillian Whyte would have been stopped. Now, Joseph Parker wasn't going to get the benefit of any of the scorecards. The referee, the judges were all advised by Matchroom to, and certainly paid off by Matchroom to ensure a Dillian Whyte victory. A fighter who is gaining momentum within the United Kingdom, his fan base is growing. And Dillian Whyte's ultimate objective was always to fight Anthony Joshua again. Back then, when he was with Jonathan Banks, he was still a bit green in the professional ranks. Didn't really have an amateur background. Started off in combat sports. He was from the British kickboxing champion, so he made the transition to the professional ranks with very few amateur fights. Obviously, he had the one victory over Anthony Joshua in his first amateur fight. But Dillian Whyte, interesting character now. Extremely brash, so much bravado on screen. Claims to be a warrior, that he will fight anybody anywhere. And naturally, the UK casual fans, they will reiterate those sentiments. But I vehemently disagree. Matchroom Sports were in negotiations with Kubrat Pulev as requested by the IBF for a final eliminator for Anthony Joshua's IBF championship belt. The negotiations subsequently went to purse bids. Matchroom Sports lost the purse bid by a ratio of around 2-1. Eddie Hearn disputed the veracity of the funds. Kubrat promoter subsequently gave them audit privileges. The funds were accordingly verified and were there. Matchroom still didn't accept that they had lost the prize bet. Submitted a 7-figure offer to Kubrat Pulev's promoters to try and stage the fight in the United Kingdom, so Dillian would have the support of his hometown fans, the Matchroom judges and the Matchroom referee. Kubrat Pulev, credit to him, he had no intention of obliging to Eddie Hearn's kickback. Pleaded with the sanctioning body that the rules had been adhered to and that the fight should be contested in Bulgaria. Dillian Whyte, Eddie Hearn, whoever made the final decision, didn't wish to proceed, and they pulled out of the fight. So that can only be constituted as Dillian Whyte ducking Kubrat Pulev. Dillian Whyte was also involved in some sort of a final eliminator with Luis Ortiz, who had just been defeated by Deontay Wilder for the WBC Championship. Dillian Whyte was extremely outspoken, angry as to why the WBC had put him in an eliminator. He felt that he was the WBC mandatory, but the WBC may have, I'm not sure, but there may have been 2 mandatories. Dominic Brazil could have been involved in one, but I don't think that was a final eliminator from my understanding. But the WBC mandated Ortiz and Dillian Whyte, and Matchroom, Dillian Whyte, whether it was that combination or Eddie specifically or Dillian, where he had intimated to Eddie, but the negotiations were terminated, and Dillian Whyte decided to go a different path. So that could also be constituted as Dillian Whyte ducking Luis Ortiz. So does Dillian Whyte truly exemplify the warrior mentality of fighting anyone, anywhere? Well, I've given you 2 situations that could be contrary to that misguided perception, in my opinion. Derek Chisora gets a lot of criticism, but Derek has at least shown heart. He fought Kubrat Pulev in Bulgaria. He fought Vitaly Klitschko in Germany, where Klitschko was based. He fought David Hay in a sort of a fight that wasn't sanctioned by the UK British Boxing Board of Control. I think it might have been Cyprus who may have sanctioned it. But Derek is more than prepared to fight anyone, anywhere. He went to Monaco and fought the European champion. It was lackluster performance, but Derek didn't make any excuses. He confessed that he was inferior on the night, but he was written off against Carlos Takam, a veteran. Yeah, he was 37, but has showed indomitable spirit, toughness in all of his bouts, even when Povetkin had put him away viciously in the end. But Takam fought, I felt, reasonably well at short range when both of them were exchanging, and that's the range they like to operate. Takam obviously a shorter heavyweight as well, and Povetkin is a great short range inside fighter. So he did well for a lot of the middle rounds. He sustained a lot of punishment, but but Vietkin's superior class prevailed in the end. Takam fought magnificently against Joseph Parker as well, a fight that could have, and I felt should have gone in Takam's favour. Joseph, his defence let him down in that fight as well. I felt Takam's, just that unrelenting aggression was beneficial to him in that fight. Joseph's synonymous gas tank problems as well also caused him his activity to really, slow down in the latter rounds, and he simply didn't do enough of every round. Didn't really work 3 minutes of every round. But he was the younger, undefeated fighter, and it's always those fighters with an intrinsic value, an exchange value, that will get the benefit of the doubt. Behind the scenes, there are a lot of promoters who lobby to ensure that these fighters prevail, so they can ultimately sign them and then promote them and then lead them on to world championships, etc. So I felt Top Rank were covertly lobbying even back then. And Parker, when Tyson Fury vacated his belts, or was compelled to do so, Joseph Parker won the vacant WBO belt against Andy Ruiz in the United States, and a safety first performance. But Andy Ruiz's superior counter-punching throughout the fight was, I felt, the difference in the fight, and it should have gone in Ruiz's favour. But Parker prevailed, started to box on the back foot, used the ring a lot more, and pot shot from distance against a smaller fighter who has tremendous hand speed but doesn't have excellent ring coverage or the ability to cut off the ring. So Parker got away with that one and won his maiden championship. So he travelled to the United Kingdom to fight Hughie Fury, and it was a bizarre fight. Hughie Fury was just a little bit too evasive, a little bit too negative. Although he was landing the cleaner punches, he was landing some peach of some uppercuts, some counter uppercuts as well, setting some traps. Parker, a bull in the china shop, just trying to come in, change levels, but he was just getting caught. But Hughie didn't try and stand toe to toe, didn't try and use his aggression to control the center of the ring. So his negativity was to his detriment in that night, and as disappointed as Hughie Fury was, Parker was aggressive on the front foot, landing the body shots, and the judges, I guess, favoured that sort of style. So yet another Matchroom card that is just tainted with corruption that has disgusted me vehemently. Eddie Hearn is determined to impose more and more roadblocks the Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua undisputed championship. It's just further and further away. There is serious doubt as to whether that fight even transpires now. Deontay Wilder, he may end up fighting Tyson Fury. Negotiations have commenced for a possible fight in December. I feel I feel Tyson Fury is in no position to be fighting Deontay Wilder. He still has hand speed, but he's still far too heavy, and the quality of oppositions are, derisory, and they will not prepare him sufficiently for a Wilder fight. A Pianeta, no, not in my opinion. I thought maybe a David Price would be a more than sufficient opponent, somebody who replicates Deontay Wilder's height, and to a certain extent he's an orthodox fighter, has a great deal of power in his right hand. You can criticize him for all of his deficiencies and his conditioning, but David Price, he does have some TNT in that right hand, and he has left hook as well. So that would have been reasonably good preparation for fighting, a Deontay, probably in the United States, but Tyson Fury is just an extremely vain man. A lot of self-confidence, which is good, but he's a fool if he thinks that he's the Tyson Fury that defeated Vladimir Klitschko a number of years ago. Too much time has passed. His out-of-ring activities, the escalation in his weight, a fractious mind. I didn't like the antics in his first fight back with the cruiserweight, the 6 feet cruiserweight, hugging and French kissing this little guy. It was just embarrassing. Frank Warren didn't seem too happy with his antics when the ring announcer was calling Tyson for his victory and raising his hands. Just go back and look at the look on Frank Warren's face. But Fury is confident in his rehabilitation, so and I think if a deal can be concluded, the thought of fighting somebody like Deontay Wilder will strike fear into him, whether he admits it or not, and that will compel him to be disciplined and have a rigorous training camp. I'm pretty sure of that. He's not a stupid man. He'll be under no illusion that he can just a 50% Tyson Fury will prevail. No. Tyson will realise that his best asset for that fight will be his mobility. Tyson has the ability to box laterally, and if you can just force Deontay Wilder to keep turning, taking away that right hand, then he has a great opportunity. It could be an extremely ugly fight like the Klitschko and Tyson Fury fight, but that won't matter to Tyson. It's all about, for him, gaining his rightful spot as the linear and the undisputed world champion. That fight could be that could be a bit of a horrible fight stylistically. Deontay doesn't throw. He's not a high octane, high volume puncher. He's a man who's more than happy to lose a number of fights. As he knows, he feels he just has to land one right hand, but it's not as easy as that. Deontay has fought a plethora of light heavyweights and journeymen to the cruiserweights, guys who had lost to Robert Stieglitz, Adonis Stevenson, Sergey Kovalev, former sparring partners of Lennox Lewis. some of the most lackluster, substandard opposition you can fathom. You know, that is what Deontay Wilder has gorged upon for over 6 years. Even after winning the WBC championship in his 33rd fight, Mr. Shelley Finkel made a statement that, you know, that the general public should calm down, that Deontay Wilder was still too green to fight the incumbent Vladimir Klitschko, and that he needed more time to develop. And this is the guy in his 33rd professional fight. But Shelley Finkel was intimating that maybe Deontay would go to Russia and fight Povetkin for a substantial amount of money. But regrettably, Deontay went downhill fighting, you know, the Molinas and the Spielkers and Gerald Washingtons and Bermain Staverns again. So power is only relative to the quality of opponent in front of you. Tyson has been on the canvas twice, so I think he can take a punch and he can get up. Yes, it was one of them was against a cruiserweight, Steve Cunningham in the United States, but he got up and he won the fight. So yeah, it's going to take more than a few right hands to put Tyson Fury away. When he's mentally right, when he's focused and determined, then it's going to be an extremely difficult proposition. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, corruption in boxing. That's my my take on the fight that took place this weekend. Matchroom Sports just continues to hypnotize the hordes and hordes of casual fans that will continue to pack out his cards and will recite his gospels and proliferate the propaganda that, you know, that he just continues to spew. It's such a pity that the O2 Arena couldn't have been struck down by a Hellfire missile from a Ministry of Defense Vanguard drone, collateral damage. That would have been the ideal scenario for me. But anyway, corruption in boxing, transmission over.